All right, everyone, we're about to start. If you could make your way over towards the presentation screen. How's everyone doing tonight? Welcome to SVVR number 48. This is the very first meetup of 2018 for us, and this is also the very first meetup in our new space, so welcome to our new home. Thank you. We're super excited about this. Yeah, so we've been working really hard over the past month to get this space up and ready, and I think we're partially running here, and it's only going to get better. But we have a lot of really great features in this space, and hopefully this is going to be a great resource for all of you, for the community here. So many of you may remember, and many of you may have actually been there. We started way back in 2013, in April of 2013. Right down the road, right here in Mountain View. And the first couple of years we did almost all of our events in, I'll get in just a second. The first couple of years we did almost all of our events in Mountain View, right down the road, and the past couple of years we had to bounce around a bit, but we're really excited to be back in Mountain View. We always felt like it's the home of SVVR and it's where we came from. So for 2018, here we are in our new SVVR studio, Mountain View.
Yay.
Thank you. Thanks.
So glad.
So we're really excited about this space. There's a ton of things that we're doing with this space and that we're looking forward to doing with this space. You know, this is, first and foremost, this is an event venue. It's a mixed reality event venue because we want to eat our own dog food when it comes to VR. So we're going to keep experimenting with that. Every event we should have some element of VR incorporated in it. We're going to just keep pushing that as far as we can take it. We also have this really great space now for our museum. We're going to bulk that up a lot now that we have the room for it. We have an area behind this curtain right now that is a lot of junk, but it is eventually going to be more of a hardware lab. So one of the things we really want to make is this kind of VR maker space and really tying together VR and 3D printing and the real world as well. We have, the main thing that makes this space really stand out from the other one is that we have these dedicated demo rooms. So we have dedicated demo rooms, meeting rooms, a showroom area. We're hoping to get a lot of partners and sponsors in here who want to put things in the showroom area up front and really make this place a hub of VR in Silicon Valley. So beyond just the meetups, how can you guys get involved? How can you get more involved and get more access to the space? So to do that, we're launching something new tonight. It's a variation on the co-working that we've been doing last year. So we're calling this SVVR Passport. And this is basically a membership network for people who are creating the future in virtual reality and augmented reality. So with SVVR Passport, it's a membership. You join, you get a lot of things. First and foremost, you get 24/7 access to this space here. You can come work in the middle of the night. You can come work in the day, in the morning, whenever you like, whenever you work best. You can reserve demo rooms, meeting rooms. Right now we have a dedicated room scale, 3-sensor Oculus meeting room or demo room. We have a PSVR living room demo room. We have the green screen room, which we're still setting up. We have our larger room scale Vive out there, which right now is the wireless Vive on it. And then we're going to keep adding equipment. We also have another demo PC over here, another Rift. We're going to just keep adding demo machines all over as much as we can. So with SVVR Passport, you'll get access to all of this whenever you want. Access to our equipment library. You know, we have tons of headsets, and we have a number of higher price items that maybe you can't afford, or we get things often before they're available publicly. So you get access to all of this, SVVR Slack, discounted or free SVVR events. So if you're in SVVR Passport, the meetups are free and you're automatically RSVP'd. So you no longer have to worry about that. You'll also get discounts for other events. So some of our larger events, you'll get discounts that may vary depending on the event. Discounts for partner events as well. So that's something when people ask us, which they always do, to help promote their event, we're going to say, okay, provide a discount for our members and we'll be happy to do it. So you'll get discounts to other events as well. So you get all of this for $150 a month, or even less if you commit to a year, so $125 a year. So we think this is a great deal. It's a lot cheaper than most co-working spaces. And you're going to get a lot more. And we're going to really keep this to folks that are in VR and AR and related communities and working on technologies that are tied closely to this so that it doesn't just become, you know, people all over the place. We want this to be very domain specific. So this is for an individual membership. Say you have a startup and you want you and your partner, you know, you want one seat, but you want to like switch off with your partner. You want a place to do meetings for your startup in Silicon Valley or a place to do demos. So we have a company membership, so it's only a little bit more. You pay that by the year, $2,000 a year. And you'll also get some logo placement for that as well, both here in the physical space, in our newsletters and other things. So we think this is a great deal. We hope you'll take advantage of it. If you're interested, we're going to get people signed up on Monday. So give us your info, and we'll get you the sign-up email on Monday. And yeah, so that's SVVR Passport. So I hope you take advantage of it. And I hope either way, if you can afford it, it's out of your range. You know, we're going to be doing a lot more events right here. So we're going to keep the majority of those public because we like everyone to participate. And we're also have opportunities for sponsorship. So there are higher levels of sponsorship. So if you have a company and you want to sponsor, we do have 2 tiers above the membership that actually gets you more benefits beyond that, including showroom space and the ability to showcase things here at the meetup and have, you know, reserved space for your company to show things during the events. So, and those come in, we have 2 tiers on that. So if you're interested, please come and talk to me about that and a higher level sponsorship. We really hope that we can bring the whole industry together and all contribute and use that to, you know, keep bulking up the space and improving and just make this a really great resource for the VR community here. So thank you all, welcome. And with that, I am now going to move into some talks. So I said we are doing mixed reality events. Mixed reality is a big part of what we want to do here. So if you'll bear with me 1 minute, our first speaker, we have a guest speaker. So is everything looking okay over there visually? Okay. Give me 1 minute to switch a wire. One of these days we'll get a fancy video switcher and I won't be switching wires live. This is the right one.
The old-fashioned telephone switchboard.
Yeah, we're old school here.
Yeah, man.
Video switchers are ridiculously expensive, thousands of dollars. Otherwise, we would have one. Okay. I've confirmed that was the wrong one, so now this is the right one. Okay. I have a separate mic here because this mic is going into the VR. Okay. Ben Lang, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can. All right. So this is great. So Ben Lang, many of you know Ben. Ben runs Road to VR. Road to VR has been kind of the premier news site for the VR industry since 2011. So he is way earlier than even us. We were saying earlier, you're the most old school of the new school VR people.
I like it.
I was at CES, was that a week ago now or so? And I ran into Ben there. Ben always covers CES very well. And I did not get to, CES gets bigger and bigger and more ridiculous every year. And I did not get to cover a tenth of what I wanted to with meetings and everything else going on. But Ben, I know, got to see a lot more at CES. So we asked Ben to give us a little roundup of what he saw that was interesting at CES. You know I saw the new Vive, and that was one thing I really wanted to see, and I'm very excited that I got to try that. And I got to try a few other things, but I think Ben got to try a lot more. So Ben, let's take it away with that. What did you see at CES that was interesting?
Sure. So I saw a ton of stuff, as we do every year. There's always a lot more stuff than there is really good stuff. So rather than bore you with some of the other things that are either earlier in development or just frankly not so great, as we sometimes find, I kind of broke down a couple of the things that I really took away with. A lot of the announcements or products that we got to see or hear about that are, I think, going to make an important impact in this space in the next 6 months. So here are the things that I think are worth chatting about, and you can give me a prompt, if you will, to talk about any of the ones that you'd like, or we can go in order. And I've got some handy visual cues here for as we go. So actually, maybe the Vive is a good place to start.
Yeah, the Vive is a good place.
You got to see
we both
it.
tried it. Yeah.
Sure. So just recapping what was actually announced, the Vive Pro. So everybody in the room is almost certainly familiar with the Vive. It's been one of the leading lists of the next gen. They are positioning us as premium, best of the best for professional users and the really high-end enthusiasts, which a lot of VR people are right now. So they both introduced the headset, which has, I think, first and foremost, higher resolution screen. If I remember correctly, it's 78% more pixels from the previous screen, so it's a nice jump up in resolution. There is the audio strap, which is optional with the current Vive, comes built into this one directly. So that has some benefits. It actually looks kind of similar, but it is basically completely redesigned, both the headphones and how the whole strap system works, which I found quite comfortable. But Carl, I want to ask you, what were your thoughts? What did you get to try of the headset?
Yeah, so the first thing I noticed when I put on the Vive Pro was, when you put on a Vive, you kind of expect your head to kind of dump forward, because it puts a lot of weight on the front of your head. And this really changed the balance. It's a lot more balanced now. It really felt just kind of like floating on your head. And the way the audio strap works, it's similar to the existing one, but it works a lot better. It sits a lot better. It kind of looks a little jumbly, but then you put it on your head and it just fits like a glove. I just found it really, really comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. I think aside from the visuals, definitely the next thing that I noticed when I put it on was the comfort of the head strap. The ergonomics are definitely reworked. There's an interesting, rather than this kind of oval shape that kind of clamps your head in the back, they have this interesting pad that goes down lower on the back of your head, and they've got the same crank, as you mentioned before, for tightening it. But generally, it just feels like it doesn't require so much pressure to stay stable on your head. It doesn't feel like your head is kind of enclosed so much, which is really nice, which I found is kind of the feeling I get when I use the existing audio strap. So some people may remember there was the default audio strap that ships with it is just like a flimsy band, and most people don't find that very, very comfortable. It doesn't have headphones built in. They released an optional new thing several months ago called the Deluxe Audio Strap, which attaches for people who want that upgrade. This comes all built in, and yeah, you're right. This kind of feels like a more complete, thought-through design for the Vive Pro. So I think that's a big benefit. For people wondering, the field of view is exactly the same as before. So what you're going to notice is definitely higher resolution, same field of view, a little more comfort, and then there is also the Vive 2.0, or I'm sorry, the Steam VR Tracking 2.0 is built into this product. So once they release the new base stations, they're saying that you'll be able to use up to 4 if you want. You can still use the old two base station setup for the room scale space that everybody's familiar with. But if you want to go up to 4, for a space like SVVR, for instance, you can have a 33-foot by 33-foot space, awesome. Which, of course, you can put multiple users in simultaneously. So that's a pretty darn cool upgrade, especially for enterprise and commercial applications. Not a lot of home users are going to make use of that. I'm sure some crazy people will set up in their garage and move their cars out and all the furniture. But I think that's going to be really neat because you can enable a huge space, and just with 4 trackers, you could have 6 computers around the edge, and everybody could use that space interchangeably for tracking rather than setting up individual pairs of base stations for each headset. So I think very cool for people who are going to be using lots of headsets at the same time.
Yeah, it's the multi-user, I think, that I'm really excited about on this. The other thing that they announced, which I didn't actually get to try their version of it because the line was too long, was the wireless.
Yeah, that was the showstopper.
So did you get to try that?
I did get to try it. So it's this interesting kind of T-shaped device that mounts on the back of the head there. You plug in all the headset's cables. They're saying it's going to support both the Vive and the Vive Pro. The performance I found to be very good visually, but I did notice a little bit of added latency. It wasn't super bad. I think general users, if I were to put in friends or family that don't have their own headset and use VR very seriously, I don't think they'd be able to say, hey, this is laggy, but they might be able to feel it. So getting that latency down even further, I think is going to be important. They haven't announced the final release date. It's not totally finished, so I'm thinking that they're going to be able to work through this problem because I saw earlier versions of that product, or at least the reference designs that it was based on, earlier last year, and I didn't notice any latency in those. So I think there was something particular going on with this setup that introduced a little bit of additional latency. So they can get back to kind of where it was, that would be really great. I found that the wireless link was really, really robust, which was awesome. So like I was waving my hands, over my head and trying to block the transmitter and the receiver, and I basically couldn't break it. I had to completely cover the antennas and then have someone put their hand in front of the transmitter to actually get the video stopped. So that's really good. They probably spent a long time optimizing for that. And again, as with the Vive Pro, they haven't announced the final release date or the final price, either for the headset or the wireless adapter. So although there's some really cool news with the headset, the price is going to play a really key, role in whether or not this thing changes, the game for a lot of people, or it ends up being a very, expensive product.
Yep. Did you, many of us are familiar with the TP Cast. We have one here that you guys can try tonight if you haven't tried it yet. It's in the front Vive system. Did you notice how it's different from TP Cast, or did you feel that it was much different?
It's tough without being able to do a direct side-by-side comparison, so I might not be able to give as much feel as you hope. I did find it to be a little more comfortable. I think it was the thing that I could tell pretty easily. Just the way that it was mounted on the head, they obviously designed it especially for with the Vive Pro in mind and with the deluxe audio strap in mind. The way that it mounts on those, it kind of doesn't really touch your head very much, which means you don't really feel.
Oh no!
I lost you for a second there. No problem. I was just saying, it mounts on the head in a way that feels a little more comfortable than my experience with TP Cast. Although TP Cast also CES had announced the new TP Cast kind of Pro system, which is a totally different design. So we will have to see how those two end up competing on price and features once we're further through 2018.
Awesome.
I think I should mention that the wireless product and the Vive Pro, they seem to be geared toward high-end users. They're in enterprise and super enthusiasts. The headsets the first-gen headsets are getting to be a pretty great price point these days, but these products are probably going to be up on the high end for a little while.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so so I think we're running a little long, so let's see how, let's quickly run through the other things that you saw. I know I ran into you at the Pimax booth, so I know you tried the Pimax. I myself,
sure.
They were here with the 8K recently, so I'm not sure how much it changed since then.
So they're doing their V5 prototype. So again, for anyone unfamiliar, Climax, they had a very successful Kickstarter last year. They've raised $15 million following that. They're building a VR headset that they hope will deliver very high resolution and a very wide field of view. So Vive and Rift, PSVR, these all fall into this 100, 110 degree kind of field of view. Feels immersive. However, if you can push that much further, you can potentially get greater immersion. So they're working on a very novel design, which uses two displays in the headset to vastly increase the field of view. That's a very unique lenses, but there's a lot of challenges that come with that. So I got to try it. You can see that there is certainly potential. They're not there yet with a number of things like the lenses and the distortions sort of still need tweaking. But it does feel like if they're able to work through the challenges that are ahead of them before they finalize the product and start shipping, I mean, it would be awesome for them to be able to deliver the field of view that they're targeting, which is 200 degrees.
Yep. Awesome. So how was, let's go to the Lenovo Mirage Solo. Another one I did not get to try. The line was again too long and I was in a rush. But
absolutely. So this is, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Yep, no, got it.
Oh, sure. So the Lenovo Mirage Solo, this is a standalone headset, standalone VR headset. So this is, you can think of this kind of like your VR headset in the sense that you don't need to attach it to a console or PC. But instead of putting your phone in it, everything is built directly inside of it. And that has a number of advantages. You know, when you design a cell phone, it's got to be slim and have all these features that people want. And you make a lot of compromises that, you know, that device is simply not designed for VR. When you pack all the electronics in, you know, like this, and you don't have to confine it to this little slim, you know, phone for the screen and the processing and the battery, you can of course get better battery life. You can get better performance with much more lax heat restrictions. The field of view on this thing is much closer to what people are familiar with the desktop headsets. But to back up a little bit, Lenovo, we knew this was coming, but they unveiled, you know, the final product. It is priced at, they're saying under $400. They haven't announced the final pricing yet. My sense was that it's very impressive for a mobile VR headset. It's got the cameras on front, which let you get that positional tracking that you're used to with the desktop headsets,
Was the positional
which, you know, is a...
Because most of the mobile ride had pretty sketchy positional tracking.
Yes, I'd say this is definitely, it's certainly good enough. I think a lot of people will be hard pressed to tell kind of the difference between, you know, this versus a desktop headset, unless they're made looking very carefully. So it is good. I think it definitely worked. The controller that you use, however, is the Daydream controller. This is a Daydream headset. It runs that Google's Daydream ecosystem. The controller is only rotational tracking. So although it's kind of attached to your head, you don't have this full range of movement like you do. And that's a little bit weird, just from an interactive standpoint. But the thing that I took away most from this headset was that I was impressed with how it performed, how it felt. They're going for 7 hours of battery life. That's pretty awesome. But at $400, it might fall into a weird place where it's kind of expensive for a dedicated casual headset. You know, mobile is more of a casual type VR experience. Kind of expensive for a casual experience at $400. So we're going to have to see where that price actually falls. They say that they're hoping that they can bring it to a more realistic price point, but I think this needs to be more in the $200 price range to be that, like, you know, kind of easier buy for what it's providing. We'll see what they can do there.
Awesome. All right, and then finally, just quickly, what did you think of the Xiaomi?
Well, so we didn't actually get to see the Xiaomi, but there was some really interesting news, which is people may have heard the news a couple months back. Oculus announced the Oculus Go, which is their version of a standalone mobile headset. Xiaomi is manufacturing the Oculus Go for Oculus, as far as I understand. But then Oculus has basically lent the hardware, the Oculus Go hardware, to Xiaomi, who will be introducing it into China. So they're going to be basically rebranding the headset as the Mi VR, and that headset is going to be basically exclusively sold in China, whereas the Oculus Go will be sold everywhere else. What's really interesting about this is that people may be familiar with the fact that the Rift, or Oculus basically doesn't offer any other products in China right now. You can't go on their website and buy a Rift and ship it to China. They've had this kind of hands-off policy. So in order to prevent HTC, who's introducing their own standalone headset in China, perhaps from taking over that whole market, this seems like it's going to be competing with it directly, but they are not running Oculus's store. It's basically Oculus's hardware kind of lent to be marketed into China under Xiaomi's own brand, own store, all that stuff. So it's kind of a weird way for Oculus to end up in China. They're not directly there, but they, their hardware will be sold into the country in a way.
Yeah, it's a step in the direction.
Yeah, so interesting kind of business strategies that we're seeing emerge here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we're running a bit over, so I want to thank you for your time. And this is the first time we've actually integrated Facebook Spaces into an event like this, and I'm actually quite impressed with it. I think it's a great tool, and being able to pull out your props there and the photos is working pretty well. I think we'll have to do a lot more with this. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben.
Absolutely. Have a great
He's in Sunnyvale. He really doesn't want to drive.
Yeah, right, that's what I'm doing.
All right. Turn that. Yes, already. Okay, all right, so that was awesome. Thanks so much. I wanted to thank Lisa and Dee, who from the Spaces team, who were not here in any official capacity, but are just awesome parts of the community and helped out to make sure that we technically got that right. So thank you, guys. All right, and now we're going to go into Richard. And I'm sorry, Scott. Richard and Scott, who are going to have a presentation. But is it art? One of our goals for this year is to have more art, because VR is not just about startups and verticals and markets, but it's much bigger than that. So we have some good art tonight. This one.
Okay. I'm going to go to 8th inch, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll bring that right over. Okay.
I've always wanted to use that phrase, actually.
I have every cable. USB type. Oh wait, USB. Yeah,
All right, so just waiting for the audio to.
Sorry. Way to reuse some of the wires from the Facebook Spaces piece.
Yeah, that was super cool. I want to get myself up and running.
All right, there. Yeah. Okay.
All good on the sound?
You should have audio and network.
Okay.
When it gets to network.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Okay.
all right, so thanks very much, everybody. I'm very excited to be here, and it was great of Carl to be able to fit us in for this inaugural set of talks. So my name is Richard Warp, and this is Scott Looney, and we are part of an audio production studio based in Emeryville called Intonic, and we do a lot of work in the VR, AR. I think I've got all of the R's there, I'm not sure. Spaces. Also more general game audio, and also branching out into some interesting areas of biometrics and effective computing. And then we also build some software tools for our industry to help push the needle of sound for immersive experiences. On a side note, I also am a sound designer for Pollen music group, which you may have heard. They made some waves last year with Pearl, that was nominated for an Oscar, won an Emmy for a VR short. So I do a lot of work with them. And today we're going to talk about a project that Scott and I got involved with last year with a company based in London called Acute Art, and they claim themselves as the world's first interactive art platform that is a subscription-based service that allows you to essentially dial in and visit your favorite artists, their latest works in a virtual space. And they had, for the launch in Stockholm, a few sort of really well-known artists, Jeff Koons, Marina Abramovich, who's a performance artist, and then Oliver Ellison, who's a Danish Icelandic sculptor. And we were brought on to create the audio design and the interactivity for these launch pieces. The goal with the company down the line is to bring on emerging artists who want to get their work out in front of the world where they otherwise wouldn't be able to, either artists from traditional media or artists that are creating from scratch in the VR medium. And so we this was very exciting to work with these artists who are sort of very well known. They also have a lot of art that's already out there in the world. Many of you may have heard of Jeff Koons, who has his balloon dogs in Chicago and all of this kind of very crazy, shiny pop art kind of stuff all over the place. And it's an interesting problem in some ways to bring that art into the virtual space when it's existed already in the real world for some time. I remember the first time that I saw any of Oliver Ellison's work. This was called the Weather Project, and this was in the Turbine Hall in the Tate Modern in London. And it's just this gigantic sun in this enormous space, this cavernous space, and you would have people come in and they would lie down on the floor in their hundreds and just sunbathe in front of this glittering bowl. And you know, it was a sight to see this happening, with people getting so completely immersed in this experience, and the scale of it was just incredible. And so you ask yourself, well, how can this kind of scale of work translate into a virtual experience? I mean, Jeff Koons is kind of the same. His gigantic sculptures. There's this latest. I don't know if anyone's heard about this, but there's a bit of a kerfuffle happening over in France. This was a gift that Jeff Koons' 60-foot sculpture, a bouquet of tulips, that's going to supposedly go in front of the Tokyo Art Museum, and the French are all like, no. So they're having an argument about that one, a diplomatic standoff. So it was, when we were approached to do this, it was very interesting because in a lot of these cases, for these big works anyway, sound may not have even been part of the equation. It may not have even been thought about. So it sort of totally possibly changed the conversation, changed the nature of the artwork itself. When we started having these conversations with Jeff and Oliver about, well, how are we going to approach this? So I'll just show you, this was the original artwork that was shown in Berlin in 1993 called Beauty. Sorry about that. I guess the sound works. And so it's a waterfall that is a real waterfall coming from jets in the ceiling. It sprayed a fine mist that you could walk through, you could touch it. It had some sort of sound effects associated with it. So you could sort of feel it and hear it and really experience it.
From the water, was that?
The sound is from the water.
Okay.
Right, exactly. And so, this was the piece that Oliver decided he wanted to create in VR, and it was shown at the Venice Biennale last year. And he decided to create what's called a priming space ahead of the main exhibit, which was to get people ready to experience the art. So he basically took a hybrid approach of the interaction with the art piece being fairly real, but then the setup for that art piece being hyper-real. So I'll just show you just show you a clip of what that looks like, and we have that demo in the back. So if you want to try it afterwards, please come and stop by. that was sort of how it was transformed in a virtual space. I think that music and the interaction piece, I think they took it out for the actual launch. I think they just wanted to have this piece of music that sounded a bit like Blortasia while they were working. That's what they told me anyway. So, and then on the Jeff Koons piece, this one was quite a bit different. There was a lot of reliance on, there was a lot of work done on the music for this one, and a lot less on the sound design. And one of the parts of the brief that Scott's going to talk about in a minute is we wanted to build a generative sort of adaptive experience where the user was actually creating the sound world and the musical world for themselves. And so Scott built a sort of stochastic music engine to be able to do that. He'll go through that here. And so, sorry. So this was the sculpture in Rockefeller Center that went up at the end of last year, and it's a giant inflatable doll. Good old Jeff, he likes to do things big. And the challenge was, this was originally a metal sculpture that's in Argentina. And the challenge was bringing this to life in VR and making it into a real person. So on the coding side, they are in the process still of building an AI backend, to the extent that this ballerina, when you go into the experience, is going to be a tabula rasa to begin with, and basically a blank slate. It's going to learn from you, from your interactions with her in the space, and eventually become your companion sort of in the space. That's the idea. And we wanted to create this certain mood, we wanted to create this certain kind of overall feeling of playfulness and innocence, and a little bit of nostalgia as well. So I'll just show you sort of a little video of the process from getting from the very beginning of this, sort of from the motion capture to the final product. So this is a ballerina from the New York City Ballet doing a motion capture session. And we converted that into play blasts. And these were the sketches that we sort of started to put music to, that were, initially he wanted a lot of kind of Debussy kind of style, but then it became a little more orchestral, a little more playful and sort of whimsical. And there are these little bell tones that are going on. And those are the butterflies that you're seeing. This is the final model. And so this, the final ballerina model is a completely reflective surface, and so if you go up to her, you can sort of see yourself reflected in the sculpture, and so it's this kind of completely surreal world here. And an interesting part of this was that the producer hired a Norwegian artist because all he ever draws is trees. That's the only thing he draws. And so this was what created this beautiful kind of background. And so this was sort of, again, this was a sort of priming space, and then after this sort of loop point interaction, the user is able to kind of go into the space and interact themselves with the elements, including the butterflies. And we use the butterflies as a jumping off point for the generative music system. And Scott can talk just a little bit more technical detail about what we did there. It just might be interesting to hear. So, yeah.
So basically what happens is that there's sort of like, at the time that I got involved with the project, there were sort of like two parts to it. And the second part was that you were going to, in the garden, you were going to interact with the butterflies. And so we decided to have a system that involved basically 8 butterfly types and 3 chord types. and a system that I had actually found. Somebody was kind enough to actually put something on the web that kind of got me started. Posted on the Designing Sound blog, and I basically adapted it to be a little bit more randomized and that sort of stuff. And so basically it has. So yeah, I have to go backwards now.
That's okay.
Anyway, so what happens is that so there's essentially a system, and it has each system has a metronome and has a sampler and a sequencer. So and each one was basically independent. And then what we did was we would define behaviors based on how many times they would be touched. For example, the first time they were touched, they would make a sound, but it wouldn't automatically necessarily play the sequence until maybe the second or third time they were touched. And then maybe if enough of the butterflies were touched, we iterated a lot of different ideas in this development process. And so there was a lot of sort of different kinds of concepts that were going on. Like say if we touched enough of the butterflies, now let's change the whole key. So then I had to create a whole transposition method by which everything would then shift key, but it would all sound good. Everything would sound nice. So basically, that's pretty much what we did, and yeah, so then it ended up not being used, and he can speak more to that.
Well, a little caveat to that, I think a version of it is going to be used later on. This is a work that's still very much in progress, but apparently Jeff is focusing a little bit more on the AR side of things right now, and he's going to start sort of integrating the VR again at some point that we don't know exactly when. So just to wrap this up a little bit, one thing I wanted to talk about in this whole process was one thing to talk about a little bit is process, in fact, because it's a very interesting scenario when you're dealing with an artist like Jeff Koons, who is in many ways the mercurial artist. What he says goes, and you sort of have to scramble to change and adapt and figure out how to make it work and how to realize his vision, all within the highly defined constraints of working within a technology environment that's still in its sort of infancy. So it's how do you balance that? I keep thinking back to this is nothing new really here. I mean, just since the 60s or even before that, since time immemorial, there's been sort of armies of technologists, highly technical people and designers that have been sort of working, striving to incrementally improve and finally realize an artist's vision for Warhol, and including Koons back in the day as well. And there's this sort of parallel now with sort of technology coders. There's this army of sort of coders that are working to realize the vision, but the vision is in code form. So it requires a lot of different kinds of communication, and I sort of think about it in terms of in many ways it's like a technology, it's like a tech startup or something like that. There's a lot of rapid iteration. The timescales are ridiculously short in some cases. I do remember at 2 a.m. one day when I had written 10 minutes of music for Jeff. And I just couldn't do it anymore. And this was a constant process, and lots of ideas were getting rejected all the time. So it's sort of really how to go about managing that within an artistic context. So I just kind of think about this in this idea of 3 layers really: the artistic process. So that's Jeff in his studio working on the latest iteration of the ballerina, communicating that to the designers. And then the designers translating that's sort of really their gift, is being able to translate that into actionable, executable sort of steps to get the code to work in a way that's not just perfunctory, it's actually achieving the artistic goals as well. And so, and of course there's this threadbare kind of part where the artist may actually take on board what the designer and the producer says and feed it back into the loop, but they certainly don't have to. And they can quite easily say, that's interesting, no, do what I asked you to do, please. And then you have to basically figure out a way to, as sort of nimbly as possible, get everything back on track. So one of my colleagues that I was working with described this as lean creativity, and I sort of really like that term as a sort of way to approach this kind of work. So that's about all we have. Like I said, we've got both demos at the back. We've got the Coons prototype with the butterflies, and you can kind of create your musicscapes. And then the Ellison, the one that is currently launched, it launched in December, so we have that version over there as well. And if you want to get in touch, please take a note of our email there and come talk to us afterwards. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you want to do one question?
Oh, I'm happy to do any questions. Yeah.
Were there any
sure.
questions?
Yeah, if there's questions.
We're running short, so we'll just do one. So
okay.
You were first here.
Okay.
You mentioned that the ballerina reflects the environment, including you. How do you construct the avatar for the user?
Right. So that would be a question for Rodrigo for sure. It was interesting in the early phases of the ballerina model. The reflection that we saw was actually the person in the mocap suit. It was the reflection. I was like, is that me? Is that actually? No, wait, no, it's some guy who looks a lot like me. He's wearing a mocap suit. And so I think that's what happened, that there was a sort of mocap person of the reflection looking at the ballerina, and then that's sort of translated based on your positioning. Does that answer the question roughly?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. Please do try their demo on the live up front when we break for demos. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and then our final presentation before we get into community announcements is from Lucas. So I met Lucas yesterday, and I spoke to him after about 5 minutes of speaking to him. I thought he just really had just such an interesting approach and way of looking at this that I immediately invited him. I said, all right, let's get him up here. So take it away, Lucas.
Hello, everyone. I hope that that means I'll be winging it, so please bear with me.
Oh, I'm sorry, do you have audio? Do you need audio for that?
Yes.
Okay, we have to send the audio through the headphone jack. We have to set the audio device to that.
Has Microsoft killed those yet?
Surface Book 2 has a headphone jack, all right. Does not have an HDMI or DisplayPort, by the way.
All right, get ready. I warned you. For the past year, I've been making a bunch of things with virtual augmented reality, anything I could get my hands on. And I was trying to find out exactly what are the things that make immersive apps intuitive and fun to use. Excuse me. And one of the cool, I want to be talking about virtual and augmented reality like interchangeably. I think I don't look at them as opposites at all, but I do believe that virtual and augmented reality right now have different key strengths. And VR is great for anything that requires a user's full attention. You have full control over everything they look at, they listen, and you can use that to craft more emotional experiences, and you can really design sensorial input that's distraction-free in a way you can't do in AR. AR is all about physical context, however, and it allows us to basically look at things that we do in the real world and just augment them. So I like to think that VR is about building a convincing world to the user, at least for native applications, and AR is about building a convincing extension of the world. So the example that I just showed you, it's actually an app called Music, and it allows you to scatter a bunch of like audio reactive holograms in your space, but they don't react to music, they react to your ambient audio. So there's this interdependency actually between the real world input, not only like the shape of the environment, but also the audio that's coming from the real world. And I think that's extremely interesting. And AR applications that actually have that in like, if you remove the world, the app doesn't do anything, it means that you actually have something interesting. And one of the cool things about having like an app that just reacts to audio is that the world becomes the interface. So if you're like jamming with people and playing instruments, the whole thing comes to life. If you're listening to music, the whole thing comes to life. And if you're in a silent room, nothing happens. And so I want to speak of interfaces. I think that VR has a little bit of an input problem, mainly because we need to create input methods that are easy to use and they're flexible for all of us. And we also need to get people used to the fact that buttons can affect 3D landscape. And this is easy for us and easy for gamers, but teaching this to people is hard. So actually, while I've been working, it's intuitive to gamers and unintuitive to everyone else, controllers, in my opinion. And I've been testing it mostly with kids and like grandma and my friends' grandmas are non-gamers. And I've been trying to use that as a baseline to be like, how do I make decisions on my control scheme and how do I, like, how do I make apps that are for everyone and not just gamers? So just a couple of thoughts on that because I think that's been helpful to me. Teleportation is bad. When you're doing stuff for non-gamers, teaching people how to do that they have a hard time understanding that they can point at something and press a button and make something happen. So teaching teleportation automatically like excludes a really large demographic. Pointing is less emotional, it's less fun, and it's less intuitive. So if you can add interactions within the user's vicinity and just make them more physical, that's really cool. And if you really want to make things accessible, make everything usable, your application end-to-end with just one button, with just a trigger. You can have additional functionality with all the other buttons the controls offer and all the other mechanics, but if you have products that work end-to-end with just one button, automatically it becomes much more accessible and intuitive to everyone involved. And controllers are really just abstractions for hands. They are there because we don't have reliable hand tracking. But I've been working with, this is like a prototype module of the Leap Motion module, and this is my grandmother. And all of the things that I talked about the issues that people have with controllers, my grandmother did not have with hand tracking, and neither did the countless grandmas that I've tested my applications with. So this says something. This says that hands are intuitive. And it goes back to what I said earlier, that the world is the interface. You're abandoning those arbitrary like hand abstractions that we have, and you're giving them a tool they've always used. So I think that hand tracking is going to become a really big thing, and you should pay attention to what Leap Motion is doing. And they already have a bunch of cool things on the internet about how to do really cool hand-based interfaces. This is one of them. It's a guy called Martin that you should follow. And I think it's going to play a really key role in making VR accessible. And it goes right into that. The world is the interface. You can also be creative. So I recreated Snake with the HoloLens, except you play as the snake in first person. So you're just like, you have to catch these burgers around the room, and the tail grows out the back of your skull. So the head is the interface, and I think when we're kids, we're used to playing these imagination games in our heads. So it might seem unintuitive to just like duck around the room and jump in furniture to complete objectives, but I think it's an interesting use of the body as interface, and I think that's more intuitive and that's more fun than controllers. So I want to talk about storytelling and world building, and I think that's also extremely important for virtual reality user interfaces. And when it comes to VR, we're not designing apps, we're designing places, and that changes about how we think about the world, the building, the user experience, and the user interface. And outside of VR, like this is what 40 years of design has amounted to. We created right now, apps and everything. It's clean, it's functional, and it's inoffensive. On all of the apps we use, be it on web or mobile, it focuses on functionality above everything else. It's supposed to be easy to use, and that's the highest priority. But when you adapt that to VR, you end up with stuff like this. It's functional and it's clean, but it doesn't. It's 2D interfaces in a 3D world, and we all know it's a problem. But it's not only that. It's like it doesn't belong to the world. When you look at these windows and at these tabs and at these buttons, there's nothing creating them. They're being arbitrarily put there to give you functionality. And this happens even on user interfaces like Tiltbrush, which are actually really cool. They end up being 2D interfaces with 3D twists. And I'll be talking about like how to look about these in a moment, but a lot of people, functionality isn't enough. And I look at when buttons in Windows and graphical elements, user interface elements are arbitrary, they're put there by the developer so you can have access to functionality. They feel out of place because they're not making your place more interesting. They're not contributing to your world building. They're not doing anything more than just giving you a way to access functionality. So the questions I like to ask myself is like, what's the backstory behind each user interface element? Does it make my world more interesting? And what causes the UI element to exist? And games have done stuff like this for a long time. Like from Dead Space, they have 2D elements, but they're being projected from your suit. You have like a health meter that's actually attached to your suit. Every single user interface element is deeply integrated into the world, and that makes it seem less arbitrary and more intuitive. So applying that to VR seems difficult because it's a new way of thinking about applications, but I think a good rule of thumb is don't use 2D buttons ever. And like when you have little things like that, they stand out like a sore thumb because they were put there exclusively to give you access to functionality, and they don't have a reason to be there from a world building perspective. So when you're doing things right, you're going to notice that the user interface becomes invisible because it's just like deeply integrated into the world. And I've been working on something called Where Thoughts Go, which started out as an art project and it's now becoming a startup, in which I built a social network obeying these principles. There's no 2D elements. Everything is deeply integrated into the world, and I'll let it speak for itself.
Such an intense, passionate connection. In life, there's so many things that I wish I could talk to him about. Perfection is messy. Perfection is ugly. I was really obsessed with dinosaurs. It depends on the day and when you ask me.
I feel lucky to have found it so young and so early.
We're a team above everything else. Take care of yourself. What do I do now?
You record whatever you want to record.
So this probably doesn't look like a social network, but this is what it is. And essentially, I wanted to create a place where people could exchange intimate thoughts and look at software as... I think software should make you a better person. And this was my approach. I'm trying to create a social network on the values of like openness and kindness and all these things. And instead of just pushing a bunch of like floating buttons for playing messages and for recording things, I created a world where thoughts exist in as sleeping creatures. And if you want to listen to one, you wake it up, and then it tells you the message, and then it goes away. If you want to record a message, you have to give birth to a creature, and then it appears. And basically, these are all, yeah, I could have done all of that with 2D buttons and 2D interfaces, and it would have worked, and it could have been clean, and it could have worked great. But I instead decided to build a world and build all the foundations and the interactions around that world, and it feels right. It feels like nature, but it's a different kind of nature. So when you do those things correctly, the virtual world becomes the interface, and the user interface becomes invisible because you're going to a place. You're not using an app. And going back to Tilt Brush real quick, which again is a great UI, but this is just floating buttons, and I think they're missing a lot of creative opportunities to create something more engaging. This could be, the controllers could be, if you really want to go crazy, they could be like this creature they would have a relationship with, and it has a bunch of tentacles that are holding different brushes that you can grab off of it. And it sounds weird, but it's like, it's 3D, it's native, it's intuitive, you can pull it off, and it allows you to have an emotional connection with your controller. So here, the controller is just there to give you functionality, but it's not there to improve the world. This could be a device. This could at the very least be like a sci-fi tool that projects the buttons into space, so the buttons actually have a reason to be there. But they don't, because we focus too much on functionality and we focus too little on the world. And if we want virtual reality to be a really exciting place, we have to design natively for it. And I think storytelling and world building are going to play a major role. And if you have a hard time imagining these things, just ask kids. Kids are inherent immersive designers. We need all this expensive equipment to turn the world into a canvas. Kids don't. Kids have their imagination. And I don't think we lose them. I just think we're not actually, I think we just lose touch with it a little bit. And I think it's our job to be kids again and murder adulthood. That's what I think virtual and augmented reality exists for. So, any questions?
It's too 2D. No, that's what it's we can have 3D. Just the thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the information dump. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
How do you decide, or how does the system decide which voices are close to you when you start the app?
I believe that all all human beings are emotionally complex. We just don't look at them that way. And if you give them the opportunity and a way to be authentic, they will be. And this is what I've been noticing. The content, we're not filtering anything. All the things that you heard in the trailer were messages that people left. So I think we underestimate each other very much. And you can design social applications that get the best out of people. And this is what I'm trying to do.
Sorry, does that mean that when you appear in the world, you appear in a random place, and whoever happened to be at that place at that time, when they recorded the message, their voice is left there?
Yep.
Cool.
Can you traverse to different places?
Yes.
Like wander around?
There's no locomotion. I think this makes I don't think locomotion adds much to experiences like these because most of it happens in your head. I actually like to look at it as 3 layers. You have the physical world and the virtual world, and then the experience actually, as you're listening to people, you're just imagining things in your head. So it's a 3rd layer. It just enables your imagination. So I don't think locomotion would do much, and it keeps it simple. Again, we're trying to do, a lot of the testing occurs with like 80-year-olds who don't game, and we want it to be an experience for them.
This one might be less of a question, but have you played Fantastic Contraption? Because I think
yes.
That one actually does have the creature with the brushes thing coming out of it. It's the like, little cat thing, right? It's got the wood dowels and things that you pull out of it.
I don't think I got that far.
That one's, I don't know if it was like a version thing or something, but I think like that's where you get all your tools from, or maybe it wasn't obvious that it was a creature, but it's actually like this weird cat thing that's growing all the things.
Yeah. You see a lot of world building in games, but you see them less in apps because we still look at them as 2 different things, but there's this blend between applications and storytelling in games that has to happen for VR to work. And I think even it's not like, just because it's an enterprise application, it has to look corporate and boring. It can be fun and engaging and emotional, and I think if you're going to do that, the whole experience benefits, and people benefit too.
Hey, I think you should think about opening up to the group here when you get ready, alpha level, we can populate it with content, right? And see how,
yeah.
See how it flows.
Yeah, there we have like a sign-up form at the website. I think I should do that maybe. It's wherethoughtsgo.me because IO was taken, and .com, and .net, all that stuff. Wait, you can just follow me on Twitter. I'm going to be...
Does the sphere have more than one message in it, or is it just one message?
One message, one person.
Does it like fly away after it plays, so you don't ask it again? Or?
At the moment, yes, but we'll be making some changes to turn this into a platform.
Okay. This is halfway joke, but it's not 120 characters or anything, but like how long is the message?
As long as you want, there's no limitation.
Okay.
I think it's fun.
Have you had any experiments where you say, hey, nope, I need to pull this back, this skeuomorphism is actually getting in the way?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Have you had any experiments where you said, nope, I'm going too far, I need to pull this back because the skeuomorphism is just getting in the way?
All the time. So when it comes to those, like, in this case, the thoughts can't look too alive, because if they look too alive, the consciousness of the thought conflicts with the consciousness of the person. So they need to look like a vessel, but they can't look like a standalone living thing. So there was a fine balance here of finding the right look for it, and we're still working on it.
Trolls?
We are designing this for trolls as well. The idea is that we have a lot of interesting punishing systems, and the idea is that we don't want to ban trolls off the platform. We want this to be an opportunity for trolls to examine their behavior and not become trolls, which is hard, but we're going to try to do that. And like banning, for example, it actually makes the thoughts run away from you if you're banned. So it's like you're going to feel like isolated. It's temporary, but there's little things like that in which you can, instead of saying you're banned, you make them feel isolated, and you make them like dread their decisions and rethink what they did. Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought someone asked a question. Okay, you can talk to me later.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right.
I think it's the. That was kind of cool, actually.
See if this goes away.
Sorry about that. All right. Thanks so much, Lucas. You just got into the Boost program, so you're going to be in the area, right?
Oh yeah, I'll be here for the next 3 months, trying to turn this madness into a product that people pay for.
Awesome. So we'll see you as a regular, we hope. So thanks again. All right, and with that, let's open it up to community announcements, and then we can split for networking and demo. I know, Shannon, you have something that you need to slide for, right? So if you have the disc, we can throw them right in here. All right.
All right.
There you go.
Hey, I'm Shannon. So, before we get to that, so next week, I think February 1st, we have a meetup here for the Silicon Valley WebGL group, Silicon Valley WebGL / WebVR. So I think we'll have the Google Chrome team here give an update on the latest WebGL developments. We'll have Mr. Doob here, the author of 3JS, which you may have run into. Will be here. It's an awesome guy. I'm not worthy. You're so awesome. Anyway, he'll be there, and a guy from Uber. They're using a lot of WebGL to do a surprising amount of data analytics and stuff for scheduling cars and stuff. Kind of unexpected uses of WebGL.
You have two. Which one?
Oh, sorry, the USC thing. That other one was embarrassing.
Uh-oh. Let's open it. Let's see.
All right, so March 12th through the 15th, there's going to be a big hackathon that goes down at USC down in LA. So it's kind of a sister of the big MIT Media Labs hackathon that I was a part of this year. I think Lucas was there as well. I don't know where he went, but it was an awesome event. The one at MIT, I think there was like 350 people that participated in it. The prizes that came out were like, I handed the grand prize, it's $5,000 for the best team with the best VR experience. And I think the other prizes were $3,000, $2,000, some equipment stuff. It amounts to about $30,000 worth of prizes that go out for this hackathon, which is a nice one. So yeah, March 12th through the 15th, it's going to be, building. We basically build up a hackathon team. You show up, you have 2 days to develop a piece, kind of geared towards entertainment industry and medicine. So those are kind of two sort of verticals right now. So if you're interested in participating, please sign up. Oh, there we go. So 400 participants, $35,000 in prizes. There's a lot of equipment there to use, so you don't have to bring all your own, you don't have to schlep all your own stuff. Read the slide. It's awesome. It's not my slide. So anyway, we'll be there. I think we'll have a SVVR banner there probably in a little table.
Yeah, we're looking into whether we may be there or something.
I'm going to be down there, so I'll bring a banner anyway and spread the word of SVVR. So, so if you're interested in participating or mentoring people or being a judge or sponsoring, hit me up and I'll help you out. And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Anyone else have any community announcements? We often have a line.
I know, that's odd.
So Shannon mentioned his meetup is here next week. I did want to mention that we are going to allow some select meetups that are in the same domain as us and people we know, like Shannon, and people we know and love and trust. So if you're involved in any meetups or if you had an inkling to start something, there's not that many prime meetup days on the calendar per month, so do let me know if you're interested. And we do want to host and get other folks from the community and other angles in here. So did you have something?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Twice in one evening. So I'm part of an organization that is involved in biometrics, as I mentioned, effective computing. And we're hosting an event at Zynga on February the 21st in association with SIGGRAPH, if you know the computer graphics thing. And it's going to be also hosted by San Francisco State University, their Department of Kinesiology, I think I got that right. I've been doing some interesting work in VR exercise programs and biometric analysis of those. We'll be talking about the creativity angle and using biometrics to drive that. So it should be a really interesting event, like I said, at Zynga, Feb 21st. If you want to know more about it, please let me know. Thanks.
All right, and with that, if there's no more community announcements, we're going to break for demos and networking. We have a number of great projects. You can try Richard and Scott's project in the front. Mike from BrainFizz is showing. Are you showing Light Strike Array on Windows MR? Is that happening?
We're about to find out.
All right, we're about to find out if that's going to happening. Something may or may not be happening over here. I'm not sure. We actually have a spare Oculus set up. If anyone has anything that they want to demo here, there's an Oculus in the demo room. I have that loaded up with this amazing video that was done in Tilt Brush called "Give It to Me," which is just a ton of fun. Feel free to just walk in and try it. And enjoy. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I should have said I was looked in Fiverr. Somebody saw the demos together.
Oh yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought the wireless was awesome, man. It had great tracking.
Just one pass over to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Stop the stream.
WebGL also has WebGL.